Please don't be disappointed. I know I'm not what you signed up for." Sloane Mercer stood in the doorway of Castellanos, her hospital scrubs hidden beneath a borrowed cardigan that smelled faintly of someone else's perfume. The man at table 7 looked up from his water glass, and something in his tired eyes made her heart clench with unexpected recognition, not of his face, but of his loneliness. "You're Vivian's friend?" he asked quietly. "I'm Sloane. Vivian got called into surgery, emergency appendectomy. She asked me to come explain in person rather than just text you." She twisted her hands together. "I'm sorry. I know blind dates are awkward enough without the person not even showing up." The man stood, extending his hand. "I'm Beckett Armitage, and honestly, I'm relieved." "Relieved?" "That someone cared enough to show up and tell me. Most people would have just ghosted." He gestured to the chair across from him. Would you maybe stay, just for coffee? I took the evening off work for the first time in 3 months, got a sitter for my son, and I'm not quite ready to go home to an empty apartment yet." There was something so honest in his request that Sloane found herself sitting down before she'd consciously decided to. That's how it began. Not with attraction or romance, but with two exhausted people sharing coffee neither of them could really afford the time for. Beckett Armitage was 34, CEO of a medical supply company he'd built from nothing after his wife left him 2 years prior. He'd met Vivian through a hospital contract, and when she'd suggested a blind date, he'd said yes mostly because his business partner kept insisting he needed to start living again. What Vivian hadn't known, what no one knew, was that Beckett's wife hadn't just left. She'd systematically drained their joint accounts, maxed out credit cards in his name, and disappeared with her personal trainer while Beckett was on a business trip. She'd left their 4-year-old son Callum with a note that said motherhood was suffocating her potential. The betrayal had carved something hollow in Beckett's chest. Not heartbreak. He'd realized he'd never truly known the woman he married, but the shattering realization that he'd built a life with someone who saw him as an ATM and their child as an inconvenience. Sloane listened as he talked, not about the betrayal, he wasn't ready for that yet, but about Callum. How his son asked every night if Mommy was coming back. How Beckett was failing at bedtime stories and couldn't figure out why Callum suddenly hated the color blue, his former favorite. "I'm a disaster at this," Beckett admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "I run a company with 200 employees, but I can't get a 4-year-old to eat vegetables or sleep through the night without crying. What does that say about me?" "It says you're human," Sloane said softly, "and that you show up. That matters more than you know." She understood more than he realized. Sloane was 28, a pediatric nurse who'd been working double shifts for 3 years. Her mother had early-onset Alzheimer's, living in a memory care facility that consumed every dollar Sloane earned. Her father had left when the diagnosis came, just walked out one morning and never returned, unable to face watching his wife forget him. She'd been in her 2nd year of medical school when it happened. She'd withdrawn, taken the nursing degree she could finish faster, and accepted that her dream of becoming a pediatrician would remain exactly that, a dream. Some months she chose between her mother's care and her own rent. She'd been living on her friend Reese's couch for 8 months now, too proud to admit she was drowning. She'd planned to go straight home after delivering Vivian's message, but something about Beckett's quiet desperation kept her in that chair. Maybe because she recognized it. Maybe because she was tired of being the only one drowning. They talked for 3 hours. Not about romance or dating, but about the weight of being responsible for vulnerable people who depended on you completely. About the guilt of wondering if you're enough. About the exhaustion that settles in your bones when you can't remember the last time someone asked if you were okay. "Why did you stay tonight?" Beckett asked as they finally stood to leave. "You could have just delivered the message and left." "Because," Sloane said honestly, "you looked the way I feel, and I thought maybe we could both use a reminder that we're not alone in feeling completely overwhelmed. Would you maybe want to meet Callum?" The question came out uncertain. Not as a date
everything, but you work with kids, and I could use someone who actually knows what they're doing. I'll pay you. For advice, I mean. I don't want your money, but I'd love to meet Callum. That Saturday, she did. The little boy was small for 4, with his father's serious eyes and a fortress of walls built high. He barely spoke, but when Sloane sat down on the floor and started building with his neglected blocks, not asking questions, just being present, he eventually crept closer. "You're not Mommy," he said quietly. "No, sweetheart, I'm not." "Are you gonna leave too?" Sloane's throat tightened. She looked at Beckett, who'd gone pale. "I'm not planning to, Callum, but I think maybe you're scared people will keep leaving, and that's really, really hard." He nodded, tears spilling over. "Can I tell you a secret?" Sloane whispered. "My daddy left too, and I was really scared for a long time. But my friend Reese stayed, and now I know that the people who stay, they're the ones who matter. Your daddy, he's staying, every single day." Callum looked at his father, then back at Sloane. "Will you stay?" "For today, absolutely, and we'll figure out the rest as we go, okay?" Over the next 6 months, Sloane became a fixture in their lives. She taught Beckett about developmental stages and emotional regulation. She showed him that Callum hated blue now because his mother had worn a blue dress the day she left. She stayed for dinners not because Beckett paid her, she tried, she refused, but because somewhere along the way they'd become each other's lifeline. And Beckett, who noticed everything, saw that Sloane never talked about her own home, that she wore the same 3 outfits, that she brought her own tea bags because buying coffee out was too expensive. One evening, after Callum was asleep, he said, "Tell me about your mother." So she did. She told him everything. The Alzheimer's, the absent father, medical school abandoned, the debt, the couch surfing, the bone-deep exhaustion of loving someone who no longer remembered her name. "Why didn't you tell me?" Beckett asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Because you had enough to carry. Everyone does. I'm used to being the one who helps. What if you let someone help you for once?" He paid off her mother's facility for a year. He offered her the guest room, rent-free, with the excuse that Callum needed consistency and Sloane was already there most evenings. He created a scholarship fund for medical students with family hardships and told Sloane it was inspired by her but named it after his mother to avoid arguments. They never dated. The power dynamic felt wrong, and neither was ready. But they built something deeper. A family forged not from romance, but from showing up. From seeing each other's humanity, from staying when staying was hard. 1 year after that first substituted date, Sloane sat at Callum's bedside reading him a story. He'd started calling her Sloane Mom in that way kids blur names when they love you. "You stayed," he whispered sleepily. "I did," she confirmed, brushing his hair back. "Forever? As long as you want me here, buddy. As long as you want me." From the doorway, Beckett watched them with tears in his eyes. He'd expected to find romance on that blind date, but instead he'd found something infinitely more valuable. Someone who saw past his money to his humanity. Someone who stayed not for what he could give her, but for who they could be together. And Sloane, who had spent years giving pieces of herself away, learned that sometimes the greatest gift is letting someone give back. That family isn't about blood or marriage, it's about choosing each other, day after ordinary day. "Thank you," Beckett said later, as they sat in the quiet living room, "for being the person who showed up that night, for being the person who stayed." "Thank you," Sloane replied, "for asking me to." Because sometimes love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it's about 2 broken people learning to be whole together. About staying when leaving would be easier. About building a home from shared exhaustion and stubborn hope. And sometimes the person you weren't expecting is exactly the person you needed all along. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, subscribe, and comment.